Hello, listeners, and for those watching on YouTube, welcome back to this new episode. There are quite a few new listeners, so just a heartfelt thank you for being here and tuning in regularly. So, this week, I would like to talk about a concept which I call life focus. And it is a very French concept. So there's going to be a lot of examples this week on France and things that go on here in this country. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this and why it's important for you, because I have a lot of coaching clients that come to me in their 40s, 50s, and early 60s. And they come to me because they have been obsessed with their weight for years. They're obsessed with the number on the scale. They think daily about counting points, about counting calories. They obsess about what they put in their mouth. They think about their exercise. They think about their scale. It's the first thing that they think of when they get up. Calories in, calories out, ingredients, sugar, carbs, fat. They talk about their weight and their health with their besties. And, all of that is consuming a huge amount of energy in their brain. And so the concept that I'm going to teach you today is something that we work on and that you can apply also to stop being so focused on your weight and shift the focus to being life focused. And being life focused is very, very French. And I'll talk about it in just a second. But the reason why this is important for all of you is when you can stop obsessing and stop thinking about your weight constantly, that is usually when you drop those last 10 pounds. Because if we are constantly thinking and dissecting things and worrying about it, it means, it's taking over our life and our daily routines. So really what I want to teach you today is to learn to be focused on life. And this is it's so French. And so what I call life focused, and it's one of the things that I absolutely love about this country and about the French in general, is the French focus on experiences, on learning, and on connecting. So experiences, learning, and connecting. They are not obsessing and focusing and talking about their weight and about calories. Yes, they're talking about food, but more food from a pleasure aspect, but not from a weight and kind of an obsessive lens. So let's talk firstly about learning. Okay. So the first element of life focus is learning. The French love to learn. And I'm going to give you 4 different ways that they are constantly learning. And as you listen to this, I would encourage you to think about how that can apply to you, what you could also do differently in terms of learning, or simply try something else. So the first thing is the French read. They read all the time, and not just books and fiction, but nonfiction, newspapers, and magazines. So yes, of course, everything is digital now, but still, French, and I just find anybody can discuss almost any topic at any time, whether that be politics, whether that be war, whether that be the economy, whether that be the interest rates. Everybody has at least a basic knowledge of what's going on because people read. And so that's the first thing. The second way that I think that there's a real learning part of the French culture here is people watch documentaries. There's a lot of documentaries, whether that be on, I think that there's a lot generally about travel, whether that be in France or elsewhere. There's a lot about history. And there's a lot, also you can find so many shows around cooking, but watching something so that they can learn and just nourish that constant learning culture is extremely important. Even in the workplace, so training and development, of course, it's a big part of a lot of places, but in France, it's actually, there is legally a percentage, and I can't remember if it's of the payroll or percentage, I think it's of the payroll, that the company has to put towards training and development. So there is a learning culture. And the last point when it comes to learning is exhibits and museums. And yes, I live in Paris and there are hundreds of museums in Paris, but you could live anywhere and find some kind of temporary exhibit. Or, there are pop-up museums that happen, or you could drive an hour. But an exhibit, a museum, that is also fueling a learning culture. Simply put, the French people are curious. They're curious, they question a lot of things, and they are constantly learning. So in terms of being life-focused, that ongoing learning mindset is a very important part. The second point is experiences. So French people are focused on experiences. And so again, not focusing on the weight, not focusing on the number on the scale, and not focusing either on buying a lot of things. There's not a lot of retail therapy that goes on in France. There's not a lot of over-consuming that you could have in other countries. French people are relatively satisfied with having the basics in life and spend a lot of their money on experiences. So what do I mean by experiences? The first one is travel. People travel all the time, whether of course it's in the country, because we are so lucky to have so many wonderful things to see and do within France. We are at the center of Europe, so of course people travel around Europe, but also Asia, Africa, the Americas, all of that, everybody travels at some point in time. Even if you don't have a lot of budget, there are very low-cost travel options now. So that is something that if you are ever in a discussion with French people and you're not really sure what to talk about, ask them where their next trip is or where they've been in the past year. And it will always be a subject of conversation. When it comes to experiences also, I suggest taking guided tours. And so one of my favorite types of guided tours is I love going to cities and taking a guided tour around the city center. And I did this recently when I was in the US. I took a tour. You can take tours in Boston, or I was in Dallas and took a really interesting tour. So any kind of guided tour that will tell you about the history, about specific spots, specific historic sites. I know I was in St. Augustine a couple years ago in Florida. I did a great one there. But guided tours, French people love guided tours. So if you come to France, all you have to do is go to the tourist office and you will find tons in French and English, but a guided tour is a great way to discover something, learn something, and have a new experience. So a third way that people are life focused through experiences are with cooking classes. A lot of people take cooking classes, and in France, you can find all kinds of different classes. I've personally taken cooking classes. I've wine tasting classes, champagne tasting classes, and in April, I am going to be learning to make chocolates. So there is something for everyone. And I am sure no matter where you live, you can even now take classes, cooking classes online. But learning to cook and learning to cook things that you don't usually cook, that is what I call an experience. The fourth thing is wine tasting. Of course, we are very lucky in France to have, a lot of different vineyards, but, whether it be wine or beer or whiskey, and I'm absolutely not promoting that you should be drinking alcohol. There are just tastings that you can do also when it comes to food, or, there's just so many things that you can experience. And here again, we're talking about something that is sensorial, that you can smell, that you can touch, that you can taste. So any kind of tasting is also a beautiful experience. The French love it. And the last experience that I would like to suggest is looking for a live show. And a live show, it can be, of course, a concert. And in the US, there is always so many concerts. There's concerts in the summer by the park, or I'm from Maine. I know that LL Bean, if you've ever been there, LL Bean has free concerts. My small town in Maine has free concerts in the summer. So you can find concerts anywhere, some kind of live show, whether that be a dancing, we have troops that obviously come to Paris from different countries to put on live shows. But even in smaller towns, there's usually a theater group. So going to some kind of live show is also a life experience that French people thrive on. So that is learning, that is also different experiences. And the third way that people are life focused here in France is through connection. And what I call connection is taking time to spend with other people. I'm not talking about buzzing in and buzzing out and running to your next meeting or running to your next appointment. And I'm talking about sitting and taking time and not being rushed to go somewhere. So let me just give you some examples. So I'm recording this in April. It was recently Easter, and we had my husband's family over for lunch. And so first of all, I didn't do all the cooking, and my husband didn't do all the cooking. We usually do. I did not want to spend time in the kitchen. As most of you know, I'm moving to southern France recently, so I'm right in the middle of a very big move, and I didn't want to have to cook a lunch for 10 or 12 people. But eating is so important. Sitting down for a meal is so important in this country. So we had everybody bring something. We had somebody bring the champagne, somebody bring the wine, somebody bring the appetizers / aperitif. Somebody did the main dish, and somebody did the dessert. And so, first of all, there wasn't one or two people cooking the whole time. We shared the responsibility, and my family stayed for 5 hours. We sit on the couch. We have a drink, then we have lunch, and then we have coffee, and we just sit around and connect. I usually spend a lot of time with my family, also my husband's family at Christmas, and we weren't together this year. So we had a lot to catch up on. So we just sat, like literally sat and connected for 5 hours. I also encourage you to think about your coffee dates. Personally, coming out of COVID, and also now that I work at home quite a bit, I make, it's a little bit more isolating. And so I have found that I have to make an effort to connect with people. So I'm always thinking about who can I connect with, who can I have coffee with? And recently, just 2 basic examples. I had coffee with my real estate agent, and whom, of course, I knew we had a professional relationship, but we hadn't had more of a friendly, get to know each other type of conversation. So I had coffee with her, and I also had coffee recently with my podiatrist. It's the same thing. It's somebody that I've known now for 15 years, I think. And so we knew each other on a professional basis, but we actually hadn't sat down and just taken time to get to know each other and connect. And so having a coffee date that is long. So each of those meetings, just to give you an idea, were an hour and a half. We sat in a cafe for an hour and a half. And when I talk about connecting, it's asking questions and really listening. You're not thinking about what's next. You're not thinking about running to the next appointment. You're not thinking about, the bills that you're going to pay, or you're not thinking about your weight either. You are one-on-one connecting with the person in front of you. So coffee dates in France are very important, very big part of the culture here. It's pretty similar also to having lunch. And I've talked about this a couple times. In France, meals and mealtime is very, very important. And I love the example of my husband. So he works for a big French bank, quite traditional type situation. And he takes an hour to 90 minutes for his lunch break daily. And that is because it is very important to have that time, first of all, to decompress, but also to connect with your colleagues, get to know your colleagues, get to take a breather, talk about things outside of work. So that lunch date is also extremely important. I think connecting also in France, and I love this also about the culture here, connecting and being life-focused through connection is being able to have a discussion and being able to hear a different point of view, respect that point of view, and respectfully disagree. That is also something that French people I love doing, is to disagree. They always have a very strong opinion. Things might get a little loud and a little tense, but it's simply because in France we love to debate. We love to talk about ideas. We love to talk about different ideologies. And so connecting is also learning to listen and being able to take on maybe a viewpoint you hadn't thought about. And I'll just close my connection chapter talking about weddings. And weddings are a very big deal in France, and they last for about, or I would say at least 12 hours. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because when I got married in the US, and so I had a lot of French people that came over, and I also had, of course, a lot of Americans and American family there. And there were quite a few people who actually came, had something to eat, and left. In France, it's completely different. It is often a very big family event. People, all of the family from very far away, the distant cousins come. People haven't seen each other for a very long time, and they spend time connecting, talking, catching up, very, very important part of French culture. So being life focused, again, will help you not obsess all the time about your weight and about food. It is something that also I encourage, and we find with my clients some strategies on how to be life focused. So I'm going to give you some questions also that you can ask yourself on how you can shift your focus from being more focused on your weight and on your body to being life focused. So first question, and I would encourage you to get out a notebook and brainstorm. So when it comes to learning, what topics would I like to know more about? And I would encourage you to list 10 or 20 ideas. So what topics would I like to know more about? And then see what comes up and be very open and force yourself to find 20 ideas and then kind of sit with it and see, could I take a class? Could I read a book? Could I don't know, explore learning a language or whatever it is, but topics I would like to know more about. Afterwards, for experiences, also, where would I like to go? What would I like to learn and learn how to do? So that, whether it be, experiencing, Irish line dancing or going to a jazz concert or, going ice skating. Those are also experiences that it's interesting to say, I've never taken the time, one, to really think about it, and two, to think about how I could do it, how I could organize it. Could I, maybe you're going to visit someone somewhere, maybe there's something in that area, but where would I like to go and what would I like to learn? And when it comes to connecting, the questions I would encourage you to ask yourself. So who do I miss talking to? Okay, so make a list of who do I miss talking to. Call 3 friends that you haven't spoken to for at least 6 months. Plan a weekend away with your besties or, with your husband or with your child if, you haven't seen your children for a while. Or plan a party, and just to give you some examples, my husband and I, we love golf. And so we always plan 2 to 3 weekends away for golfing. That's always something at the top of our list. We spend time thinking about it. We spend time planning it. We spend time researching it. That is so much fun. We're also planning a party. So this weekend, because we're moving, we're having a party. And we're having a party with people in our golf circle. And so we have, probably 10 to 20 friends that we golf with. And we spend a lot of time together on the golf course or, after golf and having dinner or whatever, but we've never had anybody over. So I'm having a party this weekend and it's going to be so much fun connecting with people in a different environment. So those are just some examples, but I would really, like to encourage you. And I promise that when you are focused on living and you are life focused by learning, experiencing, and connecting, I promise that you can shift away from constantly obsessing and thinking about your weight and food. And in 9 times out of 10, you actually end up losing weight because you're focused on something else besides your body and your weight. So I hope that you have enjoyed this episode. If you have, I would love for you to leave me a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform Wishing you a fantastic day, and we'll be in touch very, very soon. Take care, everyone.